Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and I'm going to try my best to predict this year's EFL Championship. I recognize that this is very different than what I've done in the past, and I also recognize that I'm not English. However, I'm going to give it my best shot. So this is a Canadian's perspective on how the EFL Championship is going to go this year. Without further ado, let's get on with it. Sitting rock bottom at number 24, I have Rotherham. Rotherham did well to survive the championship last year, finishing 19th in the table. However, a big part of that was due to their strong start at the beginning of the year, going off the hype of winning or of getting promoted, and then dropping down the table as we go. So this year, I don't think they have that hype from being promoted and will end up struggling. Their transfers have been sensible, but I don't think enough to get them over the line, and I have them rock bottom at 24th. In 23rd, I have Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth did very well to be League One champions last year, with it being very competitive. But when you look at their goal difference compared to those that actually came up with them, they're not as offensively or defensively sound as the other promoted teams, which leads me to believe that they might struggle in compared to other promoted teams. And so yeah, I think they're going to be sent straight down and going to be in 23rd this year. In 22nd, I have gone with Cardiff. This last relegation spot was difficult to predict, as there were a few candidates that I had in mind for this position, but Cardiff has been limited by a transfer embargo, and I'm also not sure about their new manager and if they have the pedigree to do well in the championship. So Cardiff is here. Now, I understand that they've brought in some good players, like Aaron Ramsey being probably the highlight of those. And if they can click, they can be safe again this year. But I am somewhat doubtful, and I do see them being relegated in 22nd. Did it not stop? In 21st, I have QPR. I think QPR are in a bad spot this year, and it was really touch and go whether I was going to put QPR or Cardiff in the relegation. QPR massively struggled last year and continued to struggle towards the tail end of the season, even though they appointed Gareth Ainsworth as their boss. And I'm not sure if Ainsworth is the man to do the job. However, I do believe that if the ship is sinking, QPR is going to be prudent and find a new manager that will keep them in the championship another year. That's why I put them at just missing relegation at 21st. In 20th, I have Sheffield Wednesday. Everyone was surprised that Darren Moore and the club parted ways in the off-season when Sheffield got promoted. Their transfer window has also been very limited, which brings a lot of concern. However, their new manager, Cisco Munoz, I don't know how to say it, but here we go, will be the key for their season. Many people forget that Munoz got Watford promoted to the Premier League, had them in 15th in the Premier League before Watford sacked them. Now, when you look at where Watford is now, you see that they probably are regretting that decision. So I think with him at the helm, Sheffield Wednesday will just have enough to keep them up and build on for next year. So I have them in 20th. In 19th, I have Huddersfield. Now with Huddersfield, again, when I look at their squad, it's not a squad that seems like it's prepared to do well in the championship. However, when you have someone like Neil Warnock as your manager, he has a pedigree of keeping teams up in the championship. So with that in mind, I do see Huddersfield surviving. I do see them kind of still sitting towards the bottom of the championship table, but safe enough that they will be in championship for another season. So I see Huddersfield at 19th. In 18th, I see Swansea City. Now this one's tough because I think now we're starting to get into the teams that are going to be sitting around that mid-table spot, and it's hard to then decipher where they need to go. I picked Swansea City here to be 18th because with their change in management, going from Russell Martin to Michael Duff, I think it's going to be a transitional year for them. I know that they have quality, but I don't know if that's going to translate when you have such a contrasting style of play between the outgoing and ingoing managers. So I have them sitting here at 18th. I could be massively wrong about this, and they are towards the top half of the table, but I am thinking this is going to be more of a transition. So I see Swansea at 18th. In 17th, I have Preston North End. Preston always seems to be floating around that mid-table spot, and did decently well to get started and had a decent run. I think they had an undefeated streak for a while at the beginning last year and then settled into 12th. I think it's going to be some of the same, some ups and downs. But in comparison to some of the other mid-table teams, I do see that Preston hasn't had the best transfer compared to others. And so I do see Preston dropping down the table a little bit, not in a position where they're going to be threatened by relegation, but at 17th. Next, at 16th, I have Hull City. Hull City, again, seems like a team that's going to be settling into this mid-table spot after getting promoted a couple years ago. And they're making some key pieces. They're pulling in some key pieces, but I don't know to what extent they can start reaching towards the top half of the table. The one name that comes to mind is Liam Delap, that if he can come true, Hull City can certainly become more of a playoff challenger, perhaps. But at this point, I see them sitting at 16th this year. At 15th, I have Birmingham City. I think now when we look at Birmingham City, there's been a takeover. There's maybe a little bit more settled environment now at Birmingham. They have an opportunity to start kind of building on something with their new management. I think it's still going to take some time before they start pushing towards the top end of the table, but I think they're starting to get a little bit settled in here, and I see them being comfortably mid-table at 15th. In 14th, I have Stoke City. Now, Stoke City seems like a club that has some quality players, but can never really put it together and build some sense of consistency. I like the transfers that they've made, and I do hope that they can push forward and potentially get to that playoff position, push forward, and maybe think about the times that they were in the Premier League at one point. But for me, the proof is in the pudding. I have to see them be consistent before I can start putting them higher up the table. Otherwise, they're going to finish mid-table like they do on a regular basis. So I'm going to see them at 14th. In 13th, I have Bristol City. Bristol City is starting to build towards something. I really like Nigel Pearson and what he's been able to do thus far at Bristol City. I can't really put Bristol City further up because I really haven't seen that skill from this club yet. So I'm kind of putting them just outside of that maybe playoff hopeful contention, right kind of near the middle of the mid-table here. They certainly have an opportunity to push forward from here, and it would be lovely to see, but I can't put them any higher than 13th this year. At 12th, I have Watford. Watford always kind of was a weird club for me in that they are recycling managers on a regular basis, even though they've got a quality squad. This year, I think it's either going to be, really successful or, again, you're going to have lots of struggle. They are now missing some of their key players, like Ismail Assar has left the club now, and we'll see what Valérien Ismail can do for this club, but my concern is that based on how this club is being run, If Watford isn't in the playoffs by November, we're going to see a managerial change. And unfortunately, that is showing that this is not a workable model, and they're going to be sitting around mid-table if that's the case. And I do believe that's going to be the case. So I have them sitting at 12th. Next up, I have West Brom at 11th. West Brom are now in a new area. They've been known to be a back and forth team between the Premier League and the Championship, but now they've been in the Championship for a while. They aren't getting parachute payments anymore, and they have to start building a Championship squad that's going to then have a decent budget, but not overspend. And so I think it's going to take a little time for West Brom to find that. They're going to be pushing kind of around the playoffs, but still a little ways back. They'll fall off as the season goes on, and I see them settling around 10th place. At number 10, I have Blackburn. Blackburn always seem to be there or thereabout when we talk about the playoff picture, and it doesn't matter what players are pulled from this team, whether that was Adam Armstrong in the past, or now this year with the loss of Brereton Diaz. We're going to still see, I think, a team that's going to be somewhat competitive. I don't think they're necessarily going to fall off. However, I could be massively wrong in this, and they could fall further down the table. I think they'll be in and around the playoff area, fall off as the season goes on, and settle at around 10th spot. In 9th spot, I have Ipswich. Now, Ipswich Town came in second in League One last year. But the reason why I think they're going to come up so highly is that they were incredible in League One, where then they only lost 4 games, which was the lowest of anyone. They probably drew more games than they needed to, but their goal difference was incredible. Right, with scoring over 100 goals and then having the lowest goals conceded, this to me is the best team coming up from League One in their preparedness for the Championship. Now, I don't think they're going to do something like Sunderland did and jump right from promoted into the playoffs, but I can see them floating around this playoff possibility space, right, top half of the table, and so I am going to put them in 9th. For right now. In 8th, I'm putting Sunderland. Sunderland did extremely well to come from being promoted into the Championship to finishing in a playoff position in 6th spot. That is really great, and I think it's a huge thing to build on for Tony Mowbray and the rest of this club. I think they're going to continue to build on that. The only reason I'm dropping them down is because now that you're settling into the Championship, you don't have that buzz of being promoted. You're going to then maybe struggle a little bit at times, but they're still right in the race. They could easily make the playoffs again, and I could be wrong about this, but I do see them just missing out this year, settling into 8th spot. In 7th, I have Millwall. Now, Millwall always finds its way to be in this area as of late, just missing out on the playoffs. Last year, they just missed out on the playoffs, and unfortunately, I do think they're going to miss out again. They're just, they're very good at home. They need to then be able to create a little bit more, but, they could easily be making the playoffs. I do have them just missing out at 7th. Number 6, Norwich. Now, Norwich had a very disappointing year last year, finishing mid-table. I do think they are going to come back and start to challenge towards the top again. This is kind of an evolution that's going to happen. I do believe that David Wagner, he has a pedigree of getting teams promoted. I think Norwich is still going to be maybe a year or two away from that. But I do think Norwich is going to bounce back. They're going to then find themselves in a playoff spot, and I have them just making the playoffs in 6th. In 5th position, I have Coventry City. Now, Coventry did well to get into the playoffs and go all the way to the playoff final, losing to Luton in the end. But I do see them being able to continue to build on their success and be in the playoffs once again. I know that they lost Gyökeres in the offseason, and so it's going to be, difficult to see where the goals are going to come from. But they did keep Hammer a little bit, or they did keep him, so I do believe they can build off of his skill, and he's going to be a critical piece in their success this year. Mark Robbins has done well to continually have an upward trajectory for Coventry, and I know that this is not moving upward as they finished fifth last year, but with the types of teams that were relegated, I think fifth is going to be a respectable finish this year. In fourth position, I have Southampton. Now, Southampton got relegated in 20th position from the Premier League, and so I do see, there's a lot of strength in this squad, especially when, as this is being recorded, James Ward-Prowse is still in the lineup. The only concern that I have is when we look at their management and we look at someone like Russell Martin, you see them try to build what they had in Swansea, and you might have the skill level to do that, but is it enough to then push all the way to the top of the table? I am going to be a little hesitant on that. Now, I could be totally wrong, especially when you have upfront talent like Che Adams and Adam Armstrong that we know can score goals at this level. But I am going to be conservative in this and put Southampton in fourth position. In third position, I have Leicester City. Now, Leicester City, again, got relegated. They've been in the Premier League for a number of years until this point. And it is going to be a little bit of a transition. They did lose some of their young talent like Harvey Barnes and James Maddison. So I'm curious to see where they can put the pieces together. Again, Enzo Maresca as manager, we don't know what his success is going to be like. And so I have put Leicester in third behind a couple other teams because I'm not sure where they are. They've got lots of quality. They are a bit of an aging squad, but I do see them in a playoff position, and I put them in third. Number 2 is Middlesbrough. Now, for Middlesbrough, they had a huge turnaround last year. They were very low in the table. They got Michael Carrick to come in, and their trajectory to come all the way up into the playoffs was tremendous. I think that they are still feeling that high and that motivation, that they can keep that pattern going. As long as guys like Chuba Akpong continue to score goals and Michael Carrick can still get the best out of this team, I do think that this team can get themselves promoted automatically in the second position. And finally, I've got our champions in the number 1 spot is going to be Leeds this year. I think they've kept a number of their good or quality talent, and with the acquisition of Daniel Farke as their manager, I think this goes, I think he has a big experience of getting teams or like Norwich up to the Premier League, and I think he can do the same work here at Leeds. The only question that I have is when Leeds were trying to flip and do a bunch of managerial stuff in the Premier League, did they lose their defining quality that they had when they came up originally with Bielsa? And can Daniel Farke capture some of that success and bring them further in? I'm not sure, and we'll have to wait and see if they can be successful. But I am pinning them to be this year's championship leaders. So here's an overview of all of my predictions. I know that I'm going to be wrong on some, and I might be drastically wrong on others. If you have an opinion and you want to contribute it into the comments below, you're more than welcome to. I'm looking forward to the season starting right away. So thank you so much for watching. I am going to do a Premier League predictions as well. So please stay tuned to that coming next week. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.